Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. Today we are covering everything in Minecraft 1.19.4. It should be releasing sometime this week. I'm currently recording this video before the actual release has happened, but obviously we've seen everything that's coming, so let's just quickly recap it all. The first change before we jump into game: the Create New World screen has had some updates. As you can see, it's been split into 3 categories, and it's just basically easier for you or new players to understand. And a lot more buttons, once again, do have tooltips, so it's a bit easier at explaining what they actually do. So the first in-game change is the actual Vex will now have a custom animation when attacking with no items. Now you won't actually see this in survival mode due to the actual Vex with no items can't be found in survival mode. It can only be gotten by summoning it, but as you can see, it will actually charge at you now with its hands up in the air like zombies do. If we quickly just get a look, you can see that it actually charges up like so. The next change in 1.19.4, armor stands that have been renamed in an anvil or through commands. Once they actually get placed in the world, if you then try to break them, they will actually keep their name. As you can see, it is still called subscribe. Even though I placed it in the world and then broke it again, it will always keep the name until you rename it again. Let's now cover the two new commands in a game rule. The first one is /ride. This is a command that lets a entity ride another entity. So how the command is actually used is you do /ride and then the actual entity you want. If you are looking at a certain entity, then you can do the entity's name. In this case, we're going to ride ourselves. And then you can choose mount or dismount. If you obviously choose mount, it will put me on the mob you actually specify after. And if you choose dismount, it will obviously dismount me from the mob. So let's choose mount, and then the entity we enter here is going to be the entity I get mounted onto. This pig is going to be the mob I select. So if I now look at a pig, as you can see, a load of random numbers and letters has appeared. If I then enter that, as you can see, I get mounted on to the actual pig. And then if I now do the actual part, which is dismount, it will then dismount me, as you can see right there. For example, we can grab the actual name of this cow and mount the cow on top of the pig. So if we now find that pig, as you can see right here, they are now mounted on top of each other. The next new command is /damage. This is a way to inflict damage onto an entity without having to actually physically hit them. So for example, we're going to use the cow as our test subject right here. So if I do /damage and then the cow's name and then enter the amount, so let's damage it for 2, and then we can enter the damage type. So as you can see, there is a list of the damage types that are actually within Minecraft, and this basically just tells the game how they were killed. So this actual thing right here just basically does it if the mob that you damage will drop like player loot, or if you actually kill or damage a player and it kills them, then it will actually give the death message with the actual damage type you use. So let's just do this one as player attack. As you can see, the cow is damaged for 2 points of damage by a player attack. And then there is a new game rule within 1.19.4 called do and then vines spread. By default, this is set to true, so upon making a world, it will be true. Setting it to false will do it so vines, and it only actually counts for these vines. It'll make it so these vines cannot naturally spread when the actual game is ticking. I actually have got one more game rule. This is a technical game, but it's actually a command modification block limit. The actual default value for this is 32,768, and basically what this means is if you actually set this value to be higher or lower, so let's currently set it to maybe 60,000. Now, if I actually do commands like /fill or even fill biome, I will now be able to fill a maximum of 60,000 blocks rather than 32,000 blocks. There has been a change to enchantment glints. Enchantment glints have now been made a lot less visible. As you can see on my armor, it's not as obstructing the armor's like texture. The item texture that is enchanted is now using a different asset to the armored glint. Now with this change to enchantment glint, it has added 2 new accessibility settings under the accessibility settings tab, and that is glint speed. The actual default is 50, and this controls how fast the visual glint shimmers across the enchanted items. And also glint strength. The default is 75, and it controls how transparent the visual glint is on enchanted items. Actually turning the glint strength off, as you can see, this will now do it so items do not seem enchanted even though they actually are. As you can see, every single item here is enchanted, but because I've turned it off in accessibility, they don't actually appear enchanted. Another change that was actually made to armor is if you are now wearing a piece of armor and you use your equipped item button, which is your use, as you can see, you now change between armor pieces with the click of a button. You no longer need to open your inventory and then click the item on. It will now be done automatically, and this does also work for elytras. So if you wanted to quickly equip an elytra, as you can see, you can now do that by clicking your use button with the item in your hand. The slash effect actually command has been given new parameters. So as you can see, if I give myself absorption, there is now a new actual part you can enter. If you want the effect to be infinite and never ever leave the player, you can now do infinite, and this means that, as you can see, the effect is now infinite and it will never actually tick down. You will still lose it if you die or something like that. For this next change, we need to head underwater because drowns have been given a new swimming animation. As you can see, drowns will now somewhat swim towards you. It's not as good as the players at swimming, but it's different to how zombies and skeletons survive underwater. It's only a visual thing, and it doesn't really change anything about gameplay. Another change to 1.19.4, paintings have been added to the creative inventory. And yes, the painting item was always here, but every single different type of painting has now been added as well. So if you want a certain type, then you can just grab it. And I know 90% of players don't actually know what painting it is, but I guess over time you will learn them. And it does also say the creator of the painting and also how much space you need for that painting to fit. There's been some changes to the jukebox. The first one, if you actually have a music disc playing within the note block, it will now play this note particle above it. This is a parity with Bedrock Edition, but the next change is game changing. If you actually have a hopper underneath the note block, as soon as the actual music disc has stopped playing, it will extract that music disc into the hopper. Now the reason it does that is because the actual jukebox gives off a redstone signal, and as you can see, the hopper is actually locked because of that. If you want the item to be taken before it is finished, you can just push a hopper minecart under it, and as you can see, the item is extracted from it. Now this also does work to put items in. As you can see, if I remove that and then put an item into this actual hopper, as you can see, it goes straight into the note block. Now in addition to this, if you actually use a comparator, the redstone signal that is outputted would be dependent on the music disc you play. But if you actually use redstone coming from the jukebox, it will always play a redstone signal of 15, as you can see right here. So if you always want a signal of 15, make sure to only use redstone. If you want it to play dependent on the music disc, then use a comparator. Horses have also been updated. Upon breeding two horses together, if I quickly just do that, how do you breed horses? I don't even actually know. So the change to horses is if you actually breed them, they have to be tamed to breed. The baby horse's stats, so that means its health, its speed, and its also jump ability, will now be taken on average from the parents. Beforehand, I think it would always be on the lower end. Now it will average it. So if you keep breeding up horses, eventually you will end up with a super speedy horse and a super OP horse. A few changes to actually crafting. The first one is the crafting table recipe will now be unlocked upon creating a world, so you always know how to craft the item. The second thing is campfires are no longer locked behind obtaining sticks, and also crossbows are no longer locked behind obtaining sticks. The next thing, there has been a new tag added for if you're using the /ride command or making data packs where you can ride custom entities. and that is basically what mobs you will be dismounted on when underwater. This is basically making it so you can actually ride dolphins and squids and stuff like that. So if you want to ride custom entities underwater or want to limit players from riding entities underwater, you will need to update that tag. I'll have a list on screen of every mob within that tag just so you are aware. Two more things that have been added to tags is fires burn out quick. In some biomes, fire will burn out quicker than others. Once again, I'll have a list on screen of all them actual biomes. And also, snow golem melts. In some biomes, obviously, the snow golems take damage and die. That is obviously because they're too hot. That has also been added to a tag, so you can alter that tag through, obviously, data packs. They'll also be listed on screen. The next change is potions. Potions have had two updates in 1.19.4. The first one is they are no longer enchanted. They are now just pure coloured bottles. They no longer have the enchantment glint, and this is obviously for potions, also splash and lingering. And the next thing, the colours of the potions have also been updated. As you can see, they are a lot more different than what they were before. This is for accessibility, so players who maybe are colorblind or something can see them better and tell the difference a lot better. Now obviously Minecraft are aware that this doesn't fix the problem 100%, and in future they might rework potions in some sense. By rework I mean probably use different textures for each potion, but that's going to take a lot of work, so for now this is the solution. And final thing within this update before we jump to accessibility changes is the actual new button under options called credits. This is where you can basically view the credits without having to beat the Ender Dragon. So if you want to see who makes Minecraft, you can obviously roll the credits, and you can also see licenses here as well. Let's now jump to accessibility changes. So the first one is a lot of buttons are now controllable with your arrow keys. I can't really show this off because you can't see me clicking the arrow keys, but you can see my mouse is right here above game menu, and I'm actually going through the buttons without moving my mouse. This is the actual thing for a lot, so if I put my mouse right there, you can see the buttons are actually moving, and if you obviously click space on them, it does open them up. You can also go through this menu with your actual buttons as well, and a lot of menus have been updated to basically let you do this. The next accessibility, as you saw inside of resource packs, there is this new built-in resource pack called High Contrast. This makes it so all your UI elements have a lot more contrast to them. As you can see, they are now black with blue outlines and purple outlines. And as you can see, it's a lot more viewable for people with certain visibility difficulties to see the buttons a bit better. And this resource pack is built into your resource packs folder. You do not need to get it in any way. It will always be here under your actual resource packs. Another actual option with the resource pack, as you can see high contrast right here, you can actually just turn it on and off through the accessibility settings. You do not actually need to enable or disable the actual resource pack. If you want, you can turn it on and off through this button, and a lot more buttons have the actual tooltips where it tells you what it basically does, and that tooltip has also been altered so it doesn't cover the button. Another thing, auto jump has now been turned off by default. It's still an option, so if you want to turn it on you can, but when you first load up Minecraft it will now always be off unless you change that yourselves. Let's cover the next two actual accessibility toggles. The first one is notification time, and as you can see this affects the length of time that notifications stay visible on your screen. What notifications are? They are things like crafting recipes. So if I was to quickly just give myself a crafting recipe, this right here is a notification. So if I was to turn the notification display time up or down, that will stay on my screen for longer or less. The next one is damage tilt. This actually, the amount the camera shakes caused by being hurt. I've given myself absorption, so obviously I don't die. But if I was to now just place a wither rose down and then go in survival mode, as you can see, my screen is tilting. So I can actually now disable that or turn that off. As you can see, the lower the damage tilt is, the less your screen will actually shake. And the final accessibility option is if you actually go to your controls and go to keybinds, If you actually have a keybind that is being used by another button, let's just for example say I want strafe left to be using space. As you can see, it now gives me a tooltip when I hover over it saying this key is used for, and then the key it's used for. So as you can see, this says jump, this one says strafe left. And as you can see, a red indicator has now been displayed, basically saying that that button is being used and it could result in the button not working properly. There has been a lot of technical changes to the game. I'm not going to cover every single technical change because there's a lot of them and I can't really make sense of like 50% of them, but I will cover a few. Now once again, you can read the patch notes to understand every single technical change. But a few more is that there is new actual entities added to the game. These are creative only entities, so they won't do nothing for survival players unless a map is built with them. So the actual entities are summon, and then you have got display block, item display, and text display. What these basically do is it displays either a block, item, or text, depending on what one you actually summon. And then the next one is the interaction entity. And what this basically does is if you build a map using it, it will actually pick up any interaction made with this actual block it spawns. Now let's cover some of the bugs. So the first one is to do with the damage tilt. The damage tilt would always tilt the player in the same direction. Well, that has been altered now, and the damage will now, or your screen will now tilt depending on what way you take damage. So if I was to grab myself some TNT and then a flint and steel, I think this is the best way to show this. And then I was to light myself some TNT, and as you can see, my actual screen is tilted, telling me that I was hit from the actual front. If I was to now light some TNT to my left, then you can see my screen is now tilted, saying that the damage come from the left. So your screen will now tilt in the opposite angle that you take damage from. There was a bug in the game where if a actual minecart hopper had a load of different items thrown on the same pile, so as you can see like that, it wouldn't actually be able to pick up the items that it had in its inventory. So if I put a load of rails and then throw the rails there, in previous updates, the actual minecart hopper wouldn't be able to pick up them rails because it would try and pick up the other items first, although it couldn't. That is now fixed and it will now always pick up items it can. So as you can see, if I was to throw a load of these here and then throw the rails, as you can see, it now instantly picks up the rails. There's a few changes to ocean biomes. Ocean biomes would fill up with powdered snow, or certain cold ocean biomes. The actual cauldrons would fill up with powdered snow, although it was visually raining within the biomes. That has now been changed and they will now fill up with rain. Also, mobs that were on fire would not be put out by the rain in ocean biomes. That is now also been fixed. Another one is Riptide wouldn't work in some ocean biomes when it was raining. The next change is magma creams. They can obviously be killed, and when they were actually killed, their actual shadow would not update to match the size of them. As you can see, their shadow is now smaller, however small they are. There was also a bug where goats would not spawn on grass blocks after you actually create a world. So upon creating a world, goats would generate on grass, but if you was to build a farm, a goat spawning farm using grass blocks, they wouldn't actually be able to spawn on them blocks. That has now been changed and they should spawn on grass blocks again. The next change is creepers. When you actually ignite a creeper with a fire charge, it will now use a fire charge as long as you are not in creative mode. Now, skulk sensors have had a lot of updates to activate when certain actions are done in the world. I'm not going to actually showcase them because there are so many, but I will put them on screen so you can actually see what ones have been updated. A few that I'll quickly mention: when you actually put an item inside an item frame or take an item out of an item frame, also fill up a composter, and the rest will be on screen so you can see all the others. There has been 2 updates to armor. When you're actually wearing leggings, there will be no longer sea fighting on the leggings. As you can see, the textures are no longer fighting for one to be visible, and this is the same with the bottom of boots. As you can see, the texture is no longer fighting each other. That actually looks like a face. I've never seen that before, but I now can't unsee that. Another change is if you're actually wearing gold armor, actual piglings will no longer attack you when you open hopper minecarts. This has been added in parity with hoppers, because obviously if you open a hopper, they do not attack you. And also if you open hopper minecarts, they will no longer attack you. The final noticeable bugs that I'm going to mention is goats and frogs. When you would actually let them take full damage, goats don't actually, or they do, but a lot higher. So if I was to go up super high and then the actual goat or frog was to take full damage, the actual frog or goat would see that as they were being hurt by a player and they would flee. They will now no longer do that because they are aware that it was full damage, and they will no longer try and run. Anyway, that is it for 1.19.4. There was so much more that wasn't really worth talking about, or just too much to fit into one video. So the patch notes will be linked in the description if you do want to check out every single thing that was changed in 1.19.4. It was actually quite a good update, mainly focusing on accessibility for Minecraft to make it more accessible for everyone in the world. But anyway, if you enjoy, leave a like and subscribe, and I guess I'll see you guys in another one. Don't forget, 1.20 snapshot should be starting very soon, or 1.19.5. So make sure you subscribe not to miss upcoming features and also changes to Minecraft, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.